Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more Neighbors from Hell stories, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the next one is titled, My Drunk Neighbor Started a Shooting. Well, this happened to me recently. First, some explaining. I live in South America, in a country kinda famous for its violence, let's just call it B. I also live on the most violent state and city, so yeah. Not a good place to live, but I guess that is how third world countries are. My front neighbor had a bar, and for most of our years living there, we had absolutely no problems with it. We do not actually know them, that might be important. For the last 2 years, things have changed. They started to play music way too loud, and guess what? From bloody Friday nights to Monday mornings, none effing stop. My father, a lieutenant colonel, could not make an agreement, neither acting nicely or threatening to call police or to make lawsuits. We actually called the police a bunch of times, but they never came. As I said before, we live in a violent area, to be more specific, between two criminal factions, so shootings are common and police are more worried about these than people playing music too loud. Fast forward to last month, I had a huge infection in my ear, my head was a huge mess and I could not even bear the sounds the AC were doing, even though it was 40 degrees, 104 Fahrenheit summer night. Unfortunately, it was a Friday. I could not withstand the pain. I was truly crying at this point and I have no idea what to do as my head is blowing up. Then magically the idea popped on my head. I will call the police, but this time I did tell someone I know was being abused by the people in the bar. Normally the cops would not believe some stranger calling for something as serious as this, because I am 19, technically still a teenager, but remember I was destroyed at this point. I was crying, my voice was weak and I was so confused to what I was doing that this happened. A woman picks up on the emergency line. I will try to translate the best I can. I speak Portuguese and there are a lot of expressions exclusive to our language. Nice lady NL, me for me. NL, hello, 190, emergency number here. How can I? Me, sobbing and stuttering a lot. Please, I need help. There's a girl being touched. She's asking for help but they keep threatening her. NL, okay, I need you to calm down. What is happening? Are you safe? Where are you? Me, I'm at home, but I can see what's happening through my window. I'm a close neighbor, she was screaming, and then another guy pulled out a knife and kept screaming at her saying he will cut her all up. Please, you gotta help her. NL, we will, please calm down so we can help. Where are you? I said the bar's address, it takes a bit and NL tells me it is important for me to stay on the call through it all. As soon as the cops arrived, I heard shots. My head is exploding with each bang. Those are not coming from the cops' vehicle, they are coming from the bar. NL, are you alright? What about the girl? Me, yes, I'm okay. I'm pretty sure she ran away uphill. NL, okay, find somewhere safe. Keep yourself low on the ground and stay as quiet as you can be. Thanks for your help, leave it to us. Lots of bangs. I had no idea what was going to happen. I felt so bad. I did not want anyone to be hurt, just get some jail time so I could have some peace. I was sick for damn sake. I'm not thinking straight. The guilt was killing me. 15 minutes later the shooting stops. I wait for 5 more minutes, so 20 minutes have passed since all of this began. I got out of my hidden stop, my bathroom, and now I am looking at my room's window. There are 5 people lined up at the wall with their hands at their back, probably handcuffed. They were kinda bloody, but it looks like no one was badly hurt. What there is though is another cop car on the street with the trunk open, 2 police officers taking turns filling it with some white bags. I don't know if those are drugs, ammunition or whatever, but there is a lot. 2 weeks later, I tried talking to a neighbor about what happened, of course not telling I am the cause of it. I wanted to know if someone got hurt during the shooting. I was still feeling guilty, but the way it looked, it was a bad idea just asking about it right away. She told me that no one at the street was hurt. The people on the bar were actually drug dealers. No surprise there, they did start the shooting and they were actually the only ones who got shot as they were already pretty drunk. I could not know what was going to happen, I just wanted some quiet and peace. I did not expect anything like that. I still feel guilty, but I guess if they were free they would do more damage. I am not doing that again, but at the very least I can sleep tightly. Makes you wonder what kind of country that is, because it sounds extremely lawless. But then again, I would say the story is actually legitimate, because it really seems that OP is not a native speaker, and judging by the sentence structure, he seems to really be Portuguese. And I'm curious, have you ever called the police and gotten someone else in a dangerous situation? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to help me get back in the YouTube algorithm. Thank you very much. And the next one is titled Great Revenge on a Crappy Neighbor. Backstory first, revenge at the end. My neighbor in short effing sucks. In the 6 years I lived here, he has tried to convince us our lawn was actually his. When it did not work, he got angry, parked a most likely stolen boat in my yard we had to have towed, driven and parked his truck in my yard. In addition, he tried to cut down living trees in my yard for firewood, chopped wood in my yard and told me it was so his yard was not a mess. Trespasses, and has tried to tell me he is volunteering with the HOA and thus has permission. When the weather is nice and I have my windows open, he will come out with a chainsaw. Sometimes he chops wood, most of the time he just stares at my house until I get fed up with the sound and shut my windows. As soon as I do, he stops the chainsaw and goes inside. As soon as I open them again, he is right back outside revving the chainsaw again, trying to be annoying. There has been a ton more issues, but those are the highlights. We live in an HOA that is thankfully really chill. Every time I had an issue, I called them and made an official complaint. They sent out someone to talk to him, and that would be the end of it for a bit, till he was back on his bullcrap. Eventually, I ended up calling the cops while he was in my yard, drunk, screaming at me. After that, several things happened rather quickly. Since it escalated to police, he was no longer in good standing with the HOA. If you are not in good standing, rent goes up by several $100s. It won't decrease until the board votes to let him back in. That does not look like it will happen. They are rather pissed he was claiming to do volunteer work for them when he wasn't. It's also in our HOA rules that you cannot use a chainsaw on your property without permission. Usually no one cares, but he was chopping down communal as well as trees on other residents' lots, so they came down on him hard. And finally, the pettiest of the revenge. Now that it is getting warmer out, I have had my windows open. I also love to play music while I clean during the day. Yesterday he was doing yard work or something. I put my Bluetooth speaker in my kitchen window and played some very loud MSI. Then I moved on to Miss Elliott and metal covers of Disney songs. When I could tell he was getting really annoyed, I got extra petty. Anyone remember that song Switch by Will Smith? I played it that 3 times in a row and then I turned the music off. I could see the relief on his face. I waited a good 2 or 3 minutes and then I played Switch 3 more times and laughed to myself when he went inside looking pissed. And guys, if you enjoy the Neighbors from Hell stories, please let me know in the comments if you want to hear more of them. And the next one is titled, Don't want to trim your bushes? I will make you remove them completely. I know the title sounds like I am a 65-year-old man who's constantly running to the front door yelling at kids on the other side of the street to not play on my lawn, but hear me out. By the way, I am from Germany, so I apologize for some of the vocabs not being used right. We've been living in a mid/upper class street of my town for around 10 years now. Due to regulations that our real estate agent did not mention when selling it to my mom and dad, our foundations were set lower than the ones of our neighbors, which was not much of a problem until the neighbor right in front of us, we have a small sideway in the street where our and other houses are located, so our houses are just 4 meters apart from each other, started to grow bushes to seal off his garden from the outside world. When we noticed them getting bigger, we did what every person would do and jokingly reminded him to please keep the bushes in check so they don't grow too big. They ignored it for as long as they lived there, which freaked my mother out. She is mentally ill. which ultimately led to her not being able to really work anything but an approximately $500 job anymore, despite her only being in her late 40s. Me and my brother were not able to clean our front yard as often as it needs to be cleaned due to school and university being very stressful. We would have to clean it on the daily basis, even in summer, because their bushes were shedding leaves left and right. Another thing that was annoying was that our rain drains for our front porch and garage were stuffed up with the leaves and would regularly overflow. My neighbors then moved out about 1 year ago and a new couple moved in who we first thought were nice. Turns out they were even worse than the other neighbors and even mouthier. They made very clear that the sealed-off garden and their house having a higher foundation than ours and the rest of our neighbors' properties were the main reason they bought it, and they won't change anything about it. My mom was getting so freaked out about all of that, keep in mind that she is ill, that she was close to selling the house. The neighbor kept being annoying as hell and even threw parties in his garden, which oftentimes were way too loud and kept all neighbors awake, resulting in us or one of our neighbors having to call the police. So one day my mother looked out the front door and snapped after seeing how many leaves and other stuff from the neighbor's bushes were laying in our front yard. She ran out into the garage, grabbed a lawn bag, put a bunch of stuff that was laying in our front yard into it and threw them in front of my neighbor's door, which is illegal in Germany. A few hours later my neighbors came to us being petty and all smug, saying he would sue us and that we would have to pay loads and loads of money for ruining his front yard with our garbage, etc. Afterwards he took photos of our house and even zoomed into our windows, illegal as well, which I was lucky to see through my window and record him doing it. I then proceeded to look into city regulations and soon found out that we could not really do anything about their leaves falling on our front yard, but there is an extra clause in the regulations which states that this only applies for as long as the other party's living conditions are not compromised. When our neighbor then went through with his lawsuit, I was completely prepared to ruin his day. The judge wanted to make it a quick case, but our lawyer showed her all the evidence that clearly showed him that his leaves were first compromising our living quality by blocking our drains with his garbage, and second, he was breaking privacy laws by filming our house without consent. Furthermore, my mom has a disabled ID due to her illness, which combined with us telling her, the judge, for how long we had to endure all of this, led to the charges against us being dropped and him having to pay a fee for breaking privacy laws and him having to do something against his bushes. My neighbor was then given two options on how he could proceed. First, he somehow manages to stop the leaves from falling on our property, or he has to tear everything down and has to build another form of protection which would not compromise our living quality. He had 1 month to find a solution, but ended up not finding one, which led to him having to tear down the whole thing. My mom was happier than I had ever seen her in the past 10 years and sat through the whole thing. The only thing that was missing to make all of this perfect was her having popcorn. And guys, thankfully I've never had to call the police on any of my neighbors, but I'm curious, have you ever called the police on someone, especially your neighbors? Let us know if you did in the comments. And the first one is titled, "Neighbor posts pictures of my son all over town, so I help his tenant sue him." I live in a small town next to a city that really has a little town feel to it, but not without it feeling like I am living in the boonies. I moved in my house 15 years ago on a street that has maybe 5 houses on it. I get along with everybody near me to the point that we have a street party 3 times a year to get to know each other. The one no-show is always the guy that lives across from me. Let's call him passive-aggressive neighbor. He owns and lives in a duplex that is kind of tucked behind some trees and has a paved driveway that leads to it. But it is open enough that I can see his renter's side of the house. He's the one guy that has lived on this street longer than me. For the first 10 years I never saw the guy. He was a recluse and I recognized that. The first strange thing that happened was when I hired painters to paint my house. Even though I have ample parking, for some reason the painters wanted to park on his side of the street. The next day concrete blocks were lined up on the side of the street of his property. Which was kind of ridiculous considering a car has never ever parked there in the 10 years I had lived there. Also, as I said, his house is down a long driveway, but whatever. Like I said, I have plenty of parking, and at the time I thought it was funny. Now my revenge story. A year and a half ago, my wife received a letter with no return address and no name in the letter. What it was a passive-aggressive letter saying, "Hello OP's wife, you are a person that knows a lot of people around here, can you please make sure these boys stay off my property?" And in this letter were printed photos of 3 boys, one of them was our 7-year-old son. One of the other boys was my son's friend that lived next to this guy, and the boys were using his driveway to cut to his friend's house. Now, I was thinking the guy could have had some balls and knocked on my door and talked to me, but it was a fair enough request, so the 3 boys and their parents had a meeting at my house where we told them under no reason are they to go on his property again. All the boys said, "Okay, no problem." It was during this time I found out that the father of my son's friend had an ongoing legal battle with the PA neighbor about the property line. 2 days later, I get a knock on my door, and it was another neighbor that lived down the road, and he handed me a printed sign saying,
"If these boys are seen on my property again, I will call the police."
And printed on it was the same 3 pictures of my son and his friends. The friendly neighbor then told me that this was posted on every power line and streetlight post in a 6-block radius, so the nice neighbor and I walked around and removed them all. But I was pissed, who does that? So I took all the signs and the PA letter to the police station. The officer basically said, "He's a bad neighbor, but he did nothing illegal." I again talked to my son and asked him if he has been on his property again, and he said, "No way." I then showed him the letter and the signs and told him, "This guy is pretty creepy, please stay away." So in the time from this incident to the last summer, nothing has happened, but the father of my son's friend suddenly passed away. This forced my son's friend and his mom to move away. This summer my son, now 9, was playing in front of my house when a young boy came from the renter's side of this house and said that him and his single dad just moved in. So of course they became good friends, and I then told the boy's father the whole story about his landlord and my son, and in no way can he ever come to his house, but his son is welcomed any time in mine. About a month later, single dad comes to our house and shows me one of PA's neighbor's famous letters about his lease. It is for only 2 parking spots and he is violating his lease. I guess his girlfriend had been parking on the driveway, with plenty of space I might add, at night mostly. Also, he was working on his motorcycle, which is also against his lease. Single dad had been living there for 1 month and was already getting evicted. So here was where I could get my petty revenge and told him to go ahead and use my land for his girlfriend to park for his booty calls and to work on his bike. A couple of days later, I get a knock at my door, and it is a man I have never seen before. It turns out to be PA neighbor, and he wanted to discuss about his tenant's girlfriend parking in front of my house. I told him that I gave him/her permission to park there. He then started to argue with me, and I said, "Hey, look, I don't own the land in front of my house. The city does. What do you expect me to do? Put cement blocks in front of my house or take a picture of the girlfriend and post it everywhere?" I then told him to F off and slammed the door in his face. The next week I get a text, single dad's girlfriend's car had been entered, she did not lock it, and the glove compartment had been rifled through. An old phone was taken and another passive-aggressive unsigned letter saying not to park there. So with no proof, the police could not do anything to his landlord and said it was a civil matter. Luckily, I had a camera set up on my house and I sent the video of PA neighbor going through her car, and I emailed it to single dad with the statement of what PA neighbor has done to us in the past. Single dad moved out a week later but went ahead and sued his landlord. I just found out that with the help from me, single dad won his lawsuit and got $8,000 from my neighbor. And you know guys, from what I've gathered so far in my personal experience, there's always this one douchebag in each neighborhood. Do you have a person like that in your neighborhood? Let us know in the comments. And guys, unfortunately, we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.